The tow truck's engine roared like thunder in the quiet suburb, its metal chains clanking as Lillian Allen's shiny white SUV rose into the air. She screamed so loud half the neighborhood came running, slippers, bathrobes, and coffee mugs in hand. Meanwhile, I just stood there on my porch, arms crossed, coffee steaming, watching Karma finally clock in for work. See, this wasn't just another parking dispute. This was months of her blocking my driveway, smirking like the HOA crown belonged on her head. But this time, I was done playing nice. I'd built a perfectly legal trap, one she'd walk right into heels first. Before we dive into how it all went down, tell me in the comments where are you watching from and what time is it there? And hey, if you love HOA drama and sweet revenge stories like this one, don't forget to hit subscribe. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. The day it all started, the sun was shining, the sprinklers were hissing, and life in Maple Ridge Estates looked exactly like one of those glossy HOA brochures: perfect lawns, freshly painted mailboxes, and neighbors who waved just long enough to look polite. And right in the middle of that suburban peace, there was her, Lillian Allen. If an HOA could have a dictator, she was it. Perfectly coiffed blonde bob pearl earrings and a clipboard that seemed surgically attached to her hand. She didn't walk, she marched, usually with a purpose no one had asked for. I had lived in this neighborhood for 5 years. I paid my dues, trimmed my hedges, and followed every single rule in the 32-page HOA handbook. I wasn't looking for trouble. But apparently trouble had GPS, and it had my driveway pinned as its favorite destination. It started small. One random morning, I opened my garage to leave for work and found a gleaming white SUV parked dead center on my driveway. Brand new, chrome wheels. The kind of car that screamed, "I'm important, and I need you to know it." At first I thought it was a delivery mix-up. Maybe Amazon had hired armored vehicles now. So I knocked on the door of the SUV and waited. The tinted window slid down just far enough for me to see a pair of oversized sunglasses and a bright red smile. "Oh, good morning," she chirped like we were old friends. "Hiya, this is my driveway," I said, trying to sound calm. She blinked, then looked around as if confused. "Oh, don't worry, dear. I'm just checking in on some HOA matters. It'll be 5 minutes." 5 minutes turned into an hour, and that was just the first time. The second time she parked there because, according to her, the HOA was inspecting sprinkler uniformity, whatever that meant. By the third time, she didn't even bother pretending. She just left her SUV there while she went jogging. Every time I confronted her, it was the same condescending tone. "Relax, Ethan," she'd say, waving her manicured hand. "It's just a driveway. You can still get out, can't you?" Actually, no, I couldn't, because her oversized Suburban tank blocked my entire garage. The thing about HOA people like Lillian is they believe every rule applies to everyone except them. And as president, she wore that belief like a crown. I tried being civil. I emailed. I called. I even attended a board meeting where she smiled sweetly and said, "We'll address that soon, Mr. Parker." They never did. Weeks turned into months. My patience turned into caffeine. And every morning I'd walk out to that same damn SUV sitting in my driveway like a monument to arrogance. Then came the morning that broke me. It was Saturday. I had plans, real plans. My brother was flying in from Denver, and we were taking the boat out on the lake. I woke up early, grabbed coffee, opened my garage, and froze. There it was, Lillian's SUV. Again, not just parked halfway, not angled, but dead center, nose pointed toward my garage door, as if daring me to complain. I took a deep breath. I could feel the frustration boiling under my skin. I had tried everything: reason, kindness, diplomacy. None of it worked. And then, out of nowhere, she appeared. Walking down the sidewalk, bright pink workout outfit, earphones, and sipping an iced latte. "Morning," she said cheerfully, as if she hadn't just hijacked my property. "Lillian," I said through gritted teeth, "you're parked in my driveway." Again, she stopped, turned, and gave me that patronizing HOA smile that could probably curdle milk. "Oh, don't make such a fuss. I'll move it later. It's just for a while." Something in me snapped. "Lillian," I said calmly, "this is private property." She shrugged. "Technically, it's within HOA territory, which means I have certain privileges." That was it. That was the moment I realized she wasn't going to stop, not unless someone stopped her for me. So that afternoon, I went inside, opened my laptop, and pulled up the Maple Ridge Estates HOA bylaws. I read every line, every comma, every painfully boring legal phrase. And somewhere between vehicle encroachment clause and trespass provision, I found it the golden ticket. Any vehicle parked on private property without express consent of the homeowner is subject to removal at the homeowner's discretion per state towing ordinances. Perfect. The next day I called Silverline Towing, explained the situation. The dispatcher, a guy named Joe, chuckled and said, "Ah, the old HOA special. Yeah, we get those a lot. You got proof she's parking without permission." I sent him photos, timestamps, even the emails I'd sent her. "That's more than enough," he said. "When it happens again, call us. We'll make it disappear legally." Legally. My favorite word of the week. But I wasn't done. I knew Lillian, she was slippery. If she thought she could talk her way out of something, she would. So I decided to make it airtight. I installed a new Ring camera pointing straight at the driveway. I printed the HOA clause and taped it next to my garage door. And just for good measure, I called the Maple Ridge County PD and asked if I needed to file a trespass notice first. The officer laughed. "Nope. You own the property. If she parks there without consent, it's your right to tow it. Just keep your documentation." Oh, I was going to keep everything. Days passed. Lillian must have gotten busy terrorizing someone else because she didn't park on my driveway for almost a week. I started to think maybe she'd gotten the message. Then Friday came. I woke up, stretched, grabbed my coffee, and pressed the button to open the garage. The door rolled up slowly, revealing the morning sun, and there it was, her SUV. Again, like clockwork. I actually laughed, out loud. It was too perfect. The timing, the arrogance, it was like the universe was handing me the moment I'd been waiting for. I pulled out my phone, opened the Silverline Towing contact, and hit call. "Hey Joe, it's Ethan from Maple Ridge." He chuckled. "Oh yeah. The HOA guy?" "Yep," I said, grinning. "Time to make good on that promise." 10 minutes later I heard it, the distant rumble of a diesel engine rolling into the neighborhood. The sound grew louder until the Silverline tow truck turned onto my street sunlight, glinting off its chrome. They parked right behind the SUV, stepped out in their blue jumpsuits, and waved. "You the homeowner?" "Sure am," I said. "Let's do this then." They worked fast hooks, chains, hydraulics. Within 2 minutes, Lillian's precious SUV was off the ground, its tires spinning helplessly in the air. And right on cue, as if fate had scheduled the performance, Lillian came striding down the sidewalk, phone in hand, eyes widening in horror. "What do you think you're doing?" she shrieked. I sipped my coffee, leaned against the garage frame, and said casually, "Good morning, Lillian. You're trespassing again. I'm just resolving it." The neighbors peeked through their windows. Someone even recorded. Lillian ran toward the tow truck, arms flailing. "You can't tow my car. I'm the HOA president," the driver shrugged. "Ma'am, this isn't HOA property. It's his driveway." She froze speechless for once in her life. Then her face twisted with fury. "You'll regret this," she screamed. "I'll have you fined. I raised my phone, showing the camera recording the whole thing. "Say hi to the HOA compliance board, Lillian." For a split second, she didn't know whether to cry or combust. The tow truck roared, the SUV lifted higher, and the driver nodded at me. "Where to, sir?" I smiled. "Far enough, she'll have to Uber home." And as the truck rolled away, Lillian's voice faded into the distance, a symphony of disbelief and rage. For the first time in months, my driveway was empty, peaceful. I looked down at my coffee still warm and said to myself, maybe now she'll finally read the HOA bylaws. But deep down I knew this was only the beginning. Because people like Lillian Allen, they don't learn easily. They retaliate. And I was ready for it. By Monday morning, word had spread through Maple Ridge Estates faster than a rumor about an unpainted mailbox. Everyone knew about the towing. The neighborhood group chat was on fire. Some messages said, "Finally someone stood up to her." Others whispered, "Oh boy, Ethan's in for it now." Meanwhile, I sat on my porch with a second cup of coffee, enjoying the rare silence. For once, my driveway was gloriously empty. No SUV, no pink sneakers, no official HOA business. Just the sound of sprinklers and birds that didn't have an opinion about property rules. But deep down, I knew Lillian Allen wasn't the type to take humiliation quietly. And sure enough, at exactly 9:05 a.m., she struck back. The HOA office, a small converted clubhouse by the tennis court, called me. Or, more accurately, Lillian herself called me from the HOA landline, because of course she did. "Mr. Parker," she said in that sugary, weaponized tone that could curdle milk. "We need to discuss an incident that took place last Friday regarding your conduct." I almost laughed. "My conduct, yes," she replied crisply. "We've received numerous complaints. From who you and your SUV?" There was a sharp inhale on the other end. "Please come to the clubhouse. Immediately." I almost said no. But then I remembered sometimes the best way to beat someone like Lillian is to let them talk. They dig their own hole faster that way. When I walked into the clubhouse, it looked like a suburban courtroom. Lillian sat at the head of the long mahogany table, flanked by her two loyal board members, Martha the nervous treasurer, and Gary, who once tried to fine a neighbor for having overly reflective wind chimes. The second I stepped in, Lillian greeted me with a smile so fake it deserved an Oscar. "Ethan, please have a seat. Saturday." She adjusted her glasses, pulled out a stack of papers, and said, "We've reviewed several reports claiming you engaged in hostile and retaliatory behavior against a board member." I raised an eyebrow. "You mean the part where I legally towed your illegally parked car?" Gary leaned forward. "You didn't inform the HOA before acting. That's a violation of Section 8.2 of the bylaws." I interrupted, sliding my own folder onto the table. "I've read it. It says, any homeowner may remove unauthorized vehicles parked on private property. No HOA approval required." Lillian's smile wavered for a second, but she quickly recovered. "Still, it was unnecessary escalation. You could have come to me directly." I blinked. "Lillian, I did come to you, 14 times. I have the emails." Her expression froze. Martha fidgeted. Gary cleared his throat. And I continued, "I even gave you a 10-minute warning before calling the tow truck. You ignored it. I have that in writing too." For a moment there was silence, the awkward kind that smells like defeat. Then Lillian leaned back in her chair, arms crossed, eyes sharp. "Well, Mr. Parker, perhaps. Your attitude is the issue here. You seem to take pleasure in embarrassing others." I smirked. "Only when they park in my garage entrance for 3 months straight. That did it." Her composure cracked. "You think this is funny," she snapped. "You think you can humiliate me and get away with it?" I tilted my head. "You parked illegally. You got towed. I'd say karma just clocked in on time." Her eyes narrowed to slits. I could almost hear her internal monologue screaming, "This isn't over." The meeting adjourned in silence. As I walked out, I heard Gary whisper, "He's technically right, Lillian." That technically was the sweetest sound I'd ever heard. But of course, Lillian wasn't about to let a technicality end her crusade. The next day, I found a bright orange HOA notice taped to my door. "Notice of violation, unsightly surveillance, device installed without HOA approval." I stared at it dumbfounded. She was trying to find me for my security camera. Oh, it was on. I took the notice down, scanned it, and sent a reply email to the HOA board copying every homeowner in the neighborhood. "Dear board, I'd like to confirm whether my $99 Ring camera violates HOA policy, considering Section 4.7 specifically encourages reasonable home security installations. Please clarify whether this new rule applies to everyone or just homeowners whose driveways are inconveniently located near the president's parking habits. Regards, Ethan Parker." The email spread faster than wildfire. Within an hour, half the neighborhood had replied with GIFs, memes, and even one photo of a dozen other security cameras with the caption, "Fine us all, Lillian." By evening, the orange notice was gone, quietly. No apology, of course, but the fine had vanished. Still, I could tell she was simmering. The silence from her house across the street was almost eerie. No SUV sightings, no HOA patrols. Just curtains that moved a little too often as if she was watching. 3 days later, a letter arrived in my mailbox. No return address, but the handwriting was unmistakable, bold looping, and self-important. "Mr. Parker, your behavior continues to disrupt the harmony of Maple Ridge Estates. The HOA expects mutual respect, not hostility. As president, I have the right to ensure compliance and maintain standards. You may have won your little towing stunt, but understand this. I always find a way to restore order. Sincerely, L. Allen." I almost framed it. The villain monologue practically wrote itself. But instead of replying, I decided to push the one button I knew she couldn't resist: official HOA policy enforcement. So I filed a formal request for clarification with the HOA Compliance Committee, a small subgroup that didn't report directly to her. I attached the photos of her SUV blocking my driveway timestamps and the towing report. A week later, I got a response. After reviewing submitted evidence, the committee concludes that HOA President Lillian Allen violated Section 8.2 private property obstruction. The board will vote on appropriate disciplinary measures. That's when the real fun began. The next HOA meeting was packed. Usually only 5 or 6 retirees showed up. But tonight the entire neighborhood came. People brought folding chairs. Someone even brought popcorn. Lillian walked in wearing her power outfit blazer pearls and that icy smile that could freeze traffic. She stood at the podium, cleared her throat, and started with her usual spiel about community unity and upholding standards. Then came Agenda Item 4, Review of HOA President's Conduct Regarding Private Property Parking. Martha, the treasurer, looked like she wanted to melt into her seat. Gary looked fascinated, like he was watching a courtroom drama. Lillian tried to deflect, saying it was a misunderstanding and taken out of context. That's when I stood up, calm, smiling. With all due respect, I have the context right here. I walked to the front and handed the compliance report to the vice chair. Then from my phone, I played the footage from my Ring camera the moment her SUV got lifted into the air while she screamed, "You can't tow the HOA president." The room erupted in laughter. Even Gary couldn't help but snort. Lillian's face turned the color of a ripe tomato. "This is harassment," she barked. The vice chair shook his head. "No, this is evidence." After that, it was over. The board voted 3-1 to suspend her HOA privileges for 60 days pending review. For the first time in years, Maple Ridge Estates had no self-proclaimed queen. That night, I sat on my porch again, the same spot where all this started. The air was quiet, cool, peaceful. A few neighbors walked by and gave me a thumbs up. Someone even said, "You're a hero, Ethan," I laughed. I didn't feel like a hero, just a homeowner who finally fought back with patience proof and a sense of humor. I glanced at my camera, the little device that started it all, and grinned. Lillian's lights were still on across the street. Her blinds were drawn, but I could almost picture her pacing, stewing in silent rage. I raised my coffee mug toward her house like a toast. "To rules," I whispered, "and knowing them better than you." Somewhere in the distance, a tow truck rumbled down the road, a beautiful sound like poetic justice on wheels. For about 2 glorious weeks, peace returned to Maple Ridge Estates. The lawns looked greener, the mailboxes seemed shinier. Even the morning joggers stopped pretending not to notice me. They waved now, and a few of them whispered, "Nice job, Ethan." But deep down, I knew this was only the calm before the storm. Because people like Lillian Allen don't disappear, they reorganize. She might have been suspended from her position as HOA president, but that didn't stop her from stirring chaos from the shadows. It started small flyers slipped under doors, anonymous complaints, subtle rumors whispered at backyard barbecues. By the end of the month, the HOA grapevine was buzzing with her favorite narrative: Ethan Parker hates the HOA. He's trying to dismantle the rules that keep this community safe. He's an angry man with a camera who records everyone. Classic Karen warfare, not direct confrontation, but death by gossip. I ignored it at first. But then the complaints started hitting my mailbox. Complaint #1 improperly placed garbage bin. Complaint #2 fence paint slightly off from HOA approved beige tone. Complaint #3 unauthorized decorative lighting visible from street. Each one carried the same printed signature at the bottom, filed by concerned resident. Which was ironic because the concerned resident had handwriting that looked suspiciously like Lillian's, loopy, dramatic, and slanted like it was angry at the paper. I could have fought back immediately. But instead I decided to do what I do best: observe. Let her dig her own hole deeper. One afternoon I caught her in action. I was working on my porch laptop open when Lillian strolled down the street in her oversized sunglasses, clipboard in hand, pretending to be on a phone call. She stopped by my mailbox, pretended to adjust something, and slipped an envelope inside. The moment she walked away, I went over and opened it. Another complaint. This one read, "Unapproved plant species in front yard, possible violation of community landscaping guidelines." I stared at it for a full minute. She was now policing my hydrangeas. So that evening, I printed out every single notice I'd received, all 8 of them, and pinned them neatly on my front lawn with a sign that said, "Compliments of our HOA's retired dictator." Collect them all. By morning, half the neighborhood had taken photos. Someone posted it on the Maple Ridge Neighbors Facebook group. Within hours, the post had over 300 comments. The reactions were split evenly between laughter and outrage. "Oh my God, Ethan, you're savage. Is this real? Did Lillian actually report your bushes?" Finally, someone showing what it's like living under her rule. Lillian tried to defend herself in the comments, but it was a disaster. The more she typed, the more obvious it became that she was the concerned resident. She used the same phrases she'd written on my notices: community harmony, aesthetic consistency, and her favorite: protecting property values. By noon, people were screenshotting her comments and tagging them with memes of dictators and pearls. It was beautiful. That night I heard a car pull up outside. I peeked through the blinds and saw Lillian standing in my driveway again, but this time without her SUV. She was holding one of my displayed notices crumpled in her fist. "Ethan," she yelled, "take this down right now." I opened the door, still holding my coffee. "Evening, Lillian." "Out for another HOA inspection," she stormed toward me. "You're defaming me publicly. You're making a mockery of this community." Lillian, I said calmly, I didn't defame you. You defamed yourself. I'm just curating your greatest hits. Her jaw tightened. You think this is funny? You're turning people against me. I tilted my head. I think you managed that all by yourself. She looked like she was about to explode, but then she caught herself, took a breath, smoothed her hair, and smiled that fake PR smile. Fine, she said coldly. You want to play hardball? Let's see how you handle it when the HOA's insurance committee comes knocking. I watched her leave, heels clacking like gunfire on the pavement. 3 days later, I got a letter from a law firm representing the HOA. It wasn't an actual lawsuit, just a formal notice claiming my public display of private correspondence could be considered defamatory and damaging to community reputation. I almost laughed myself out of my chair. Instead of panicking, I called my friend Sam Torres, a lawyer who specialized in property law and who happened to live just 2 blocks over. Sam came over that evening, glanced at the letter, and smirked. This is garbage, he said. She's bluffing. Figured as much. But Sam added, if she's using HOA funds to send this, that's a serious problem. That's misuse of community money. That's when I realized she wasn't just trying to silence me. She was using HOA resources for personal revenge, and that was a goldmine. For the next week, I started digging. Not gossip documents. I went to the county clerk's office and requested copies of the HOA's recent expenditures. It took some paperwork, but once I got the file, I couldn't believe what I saw. There were charges for community outreach legal consultation, $3 $200 public relations retainer, $1 $100 event catering board lunch, $689, and all of them were dated within days of her suspension. Sam looked over the papers and whistled. She's spending HOA funds, like it's her personal credit card. You expose this, she's done for. I smiled. Oh, I plan to. The next HOA board meeting was even more crowded than the last one. Chairs filled up fast. People stood by the walls. Someone even live-streamed it to Facebook. Lillian walked in wearing her innocent but powerful outfit, navy blue suit, soft scarf, the kind politicians wear when pretending to apologize. She started the meeting as if nothing was wrong. I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. There's been some unfortunate misinformation circulating online, and I'm here to clear the air. I raised my hand. Before you do that, I'd like to submit a motion to review recent HOA expenditures. The room went quiet. Lillian froze mid-sentence. Excuse me, I stood up holding a folder. These records show that several large payments were made to law firms and PR companies, all dated after your suspension. Care to explain? Murmurs filled the room. Martha, the treasurer, looked pale. Wait, I didn't approve those. Lillian's voice faltered. Those were standard community expenses. Really, I said, opening one document. Because this one says consultation regarding HOA image management after towing incident. That doesn't sound very community related to me. The room erupted. Gary whispered something to Martha. Someone in the back shouted, "She used our money for her lawyer." Lillian tried to shout over the noise. Everyone calmed down. This is being taken out of context, but no one was listening anymore. The board voted on the spot to launch an audit. Lillian tried to object, but Martha, finding her backbone for the first time in years, said, "You don't have authority anymore, Lillian. Sit down." The entire room cheered. After the meeting, neighbors came up to shake my hand. One of them, old Mr. Henderson, grinned and said, "Never thought I'd see the day someone beat her at her own game." "Just took some reading," I said, patting my stack of bylaws. "And a bit of patience." As the crowd dispersed, I caught a glimpse of Lillian slipping out the side door, her posture stiff, her face pale. For the first time, she didn't look angry. She looked cornered. I almost felt bad for her. Almost. Because here's the thing, when you build your power on fear, the moment people stop fearing you, everything collapses. That night, I stood by my driveway again, breathing in the quiet. No SUV, no orange notices, no chaos. But as I turned to go inside, I noticed something odd. A set of tire marks at the edge of my driveway, like someone had stopped there briefly, then sped off. A chill ran down my spine. Lillian wasn't done. She'd lost her title, her influence, and her pride, which meant she had nothing left to lose. And that's when the real HOA war began. I should have known Lillian Allen wasn't going to accept defeat quietly. The night of the audit meeting, she vanished from public view, but her absence felt louder than her voice ever was. It was the kind of silence that came before a storm, the sort that makes you double-check your locks even though you live in the safest zip code in the county. For a few days, life returned to normal. I trimmed my hedges, waved to neighbors, and actually parked in my own driveway without seeing a single SUV. But the peace felt temporary. Too easy. Then, one Tuesday morning, I walked outside to find something new taped to my mailbox, a bright yellow notice marked Urgent, HOA Investigation. The accusation evidence suggests homeowner Ethan Parker has been operating an unlicensed home business and storing construction materials on his property. I blinked, half amused, half insulted. The only business I operated from home was answering emails for my job as a project engineer. The so-called construction materials, 2 bags of mulch and a ladder. "Oh, she's getting creative now," I muttered. I went back inside, made coffee, and called the HOA office. The new acting president, Gary, yes, that Gary picked up. "Morning, Gary. Got a fun little letter from your team today." He sighed. "Let me guess. Yellow paper bingo," he groaned. "Ethan, I swear that's not from me. We're still cleaning up her mess. She must have filed that before the audit vote." Or after, I said. "You know, as part of her farewell tour." Gary promised to look into it. I hung up, but something about the whole thing felt off. The letter wasn't printed on HOA stationery. It was a copy poorly done with a fake signature, and the email listed at the bottom wasn't the official HOA address. It was a personal Gmail account, mapleridge.enforcement@gmail.com. I typed it into the HOA records. No match. Classic Lillian. She'd gone rogue. That night, around 1030, I noticed movement on my security camera. A figure in a beige trench coat walked slowly along the sidewalk, flashlight in hand, pausing in front of my yard. The timestamp read 10:34 p.m. I zoomed in. Even through the low light, the blonde hair gave her away. "Lillian," I whispered, staring at the monitor. "You've officially lost it." I stepped outside quietly. She didn't notice me at first. She was too busy snapping photos of my garden, crouching beside my mailbox like some deranged realtor. "Evening, Lillian," I said. She flinched, nearly dropping her phone. "Ethan, you scared me." "Funny," I said. "I could say the same thing about finding you prowling my lawn after dark." She straightened, adjusting her coat like she had any dignity left. "I'm conducting a neighborhood inspection," she said. "You wouldn't understand. It's procedural." "Procedural," I smirked. "You're not HOA president anymore." Her jaw tightened. "That's temporary. And when I'm reinstated, I'll have to make sure this community hasn't fallen apart under Gary's lenient leadership." "Right," I said, stepping closer. "And does this inspection include trespassing at night?" Her nostrils flared. "You can't threaten me. I'm documenting a code violation." "Go ahead," I said, gesturing to the camera above the porch. "You're on video, too. Smile for the bylaws." She glared, shoved her phone into her purse, and stomped off into the darkness. By morning, she'd already escalated. I woke up to a barrage of emails. The subject lines read like tabloid headlines: concern over unsafe chemicals on property, possible code breach, noise complaint community, image threatened by defiant homeowner, the sender, that same fake Gmail address. And the recipients included not just the HOA board, but the county zoning department. She was trying to get me investigated by the local government. That's when I realized she wasn't just angry anymore, she was obsessed. I decided to fight fire with paperwork. I called my lawyer friend Sam Torres again. He arrived within the hour, still in his gym clothes, sipping a protein shake. "She's impersonating an HOA authority now?" he asked, skimming through the fake notices. "Yup. She even used the HOA logo. Badly, I might add." He grinned. "You realize this is a felony, right?" My eyebrows shot up. "You're kidding. Forgery and impersonation of a corporate entity. If she's sending these to county officials, that's real trouble." I leaned back, finally feeling a spark of satisfaction. "So, we set a trap," Sam grinned. "Now you're talking." Step 1, documentation. We printed every email, screenshot, and timestamp from my camera footage. Then Sam wrote a short, polite message to the county office explaining the situation. "Please be advised that the Maple Ridge HOA president was suspended pending audit. Any further communication claiming to represent the HOA from unofficial accounts should be treated as fraudulent." He CC'd the HOA board and the county legal department. Step 2, bait. I drafted a public post on the Maple Ridge Neighbors page. "Hey everyone, quick update: someone's been impersonating HOA enforcement officers. If you get any emails or letters from mapleridge.enforcement@gmail.com, it's not legit. I've reported it to the county. Stay alert." Within minutes, the post blew up. Neighbors started commenting. "I got that same letter. She sent me one about my mailbox color. She even accused me of storing a boat in my garage." What, dozens of people? All victims of Lillian's inspections. It was bigger than I thought. She wasn't just targeting me, she was trying to rebuild her authority by fear. 2 days later, the trap closed. The county code enforcement office called me. Mr. Parker, we received an anonymous email from that same address claiming you've been conducting unlicensed renovations. The sender attached photos of your property taken at night. She listed herself as acting HOA chairperson. I smiled. Perfect. Did she sign her name? Yes. L. Allen. I could almost hear Sam cheering in the background. I forwarded them the audit, report her suspension notice, and the footage from my camera time-stamped proof of her sneaking around my yard. Thank you, Mr. Parker, the official said. We'll handle it from here. By the following week, the county sheriff's department paid Lillian a visit. I wasn't there, but the neighbors were, and of course they recorded the whole thing. The video spread through the community group like wildfire, 2 deputies standing at her doorstep, while she tried to explain why she had hundreds of inspection photos on her phone. Someone in the crowd yelled, maybe she was just admiring the landscaping. Laughter broke out. Later that evening, Gary called me. Ethan, I don't know what kind of magic you pulled, but she's officially under investigation for HOA misconduct and harassment. The board's voting tomorrow to permanently revoke her position. About time, I said. Maybe we'll finally get some peace around here. Gary chuckled. Don't hold your breath. People like her always find a way back. But for now, you won. That night, I sat in my living room watching the video again. There she was, Lillian Allen, the self-proclaimed queen of Maple Ridge Estates, reduced to stammering explanations while deputies scrolled through her phone. It should have felt like victory. And it did for a moment. But then as the video looped, I noticed something odd in the reflection of her window, a familiar dark SUV parked across the street. It wasn't hers. She'd lost that one weeks ago. I stepped to the window. The SUV was still there, engine idling. When I looked closer, it sped off, disappearing around the corner. A strange chill crawled down my spine. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe it was her husband or one of her remaining loyalists. But something told me this story wasn't over yet. Because Lillian Allen wasn't the kind of person who learned from mistakes, she was the kind who rewrote them. And as much as I hated to admit it, I almost admired her persistence. Almost. The next morning, I found a new envelope in my mailbox, this one handwritten, no fake letterhead, no legal jargon, just 6 words scrawled in bold black ink. You took everything. I'm not done. No signature, no return address. But I didn't need one. I stared at the note for a long moment, then looked up toward her house. Curtains still drawn, driveway empty. I folded the paper, neatly slid it into a folder labeled evidence, and smiled to myself. All right, Lillian, I whispered. Round 2 it is. By the time the anonymous note showed up in my mailbox, I was no longer surprised. Disturbed, maybe, but not surprised. Because this was Lillian Allen, after all, the woman who once fined a neighbor because their Christmas lights sparkled too aggressively. She wasn't going to fade into HOA history quietly. No, she'd go down swinging clipboard in hand, dragging the bylaws behind her like a sword. Still, I didn't take the threat lightly. I installed an additional security camera on my side fence and another facing the backyard gate. Every angle of my property now had eyes. The system synced to my phone, storing footage automatically to the cloud. If she wanted a war of documentation, I'd win it by the terabyte. For a few days, things were calm. Too calm. Then came Friday. I left early for work that morning, coffee in hand, checking my email from the driveway. That's when I saw it, the same dark SUV from the night before, creeping slowly down the street. The windows were tinted, and it lingered a second longer than any normal car should before turning the corner. I shrugged it off. Maybe paranoia was setting in. Or maybe not. When I returned home that evening, there was another envelope waiting on my porch, no postage, just dropped off by hand. It read, Notice of Code Enforcement, Pending Violation Inspection. Apparently the county had received reports that I was operating heavy equipment and dumping waste material behind my house. The moment I read dumping, I actually laughed. My backyard was about as exciting as a golf course, trimmed grass, 2 trees, and a barbecue grill. No waste, no equipment, nothing even remotely suspicious. But this wasn't about truth. This was about narrative. And Lillian was writing hers, one forged notice at a time. The inspection was scheduled for Monday morning. The letter even listed a county inspector's name, Mr. Donnelly. I called the number on the form. A tired-sounding man answered. Code Enforcement, Donnelly speaking. Hi, this is Ethan Parker from Maple Ridge Estates. I got a letter saying you're inspecting my property for dumping violations. There was a pause. What address? I gave it to him. He sighed. That's the 4th one this month from your neighborhood. We've had someone filing fake complaints under anonymous names. I raised an eyebrow. Let me guess. Starts with L, ends with Allen. He chuckled darkly. Wouldn't surprise me. But since the complaint's logged, I still have to come check it out. Tomorrow at 9, sure, I said, grinning. You'll want to bring a camera. It's going to be entertaining. Sunday night, I prepped like I was setting up for a movie shoot. I cleaned the yard spotless, double-checked the cameras, even printed out the HOA's audit results in case she tried to spin the story again. I didn't know exactly what she was planning, but the note in my mailbox said, "I'm not done." That meant she had something left to play, and I was ready to catch her red-handed. At 8:47 a.m., Monday morning, a white county SUV pulled into my street. Inspector Donnelly stepped out mid-50 seconds, windbreaker, clipboard, the look of a man who's seen far too many ridiculous neighbor disputes. "Morning, Mr. Parker," he said. "I take it you're expecting me." "Oh, absolutely," I replied. "This way." I led him to the backyard gate, only to stop dead in my tracks. Right there behind the fence was a heap of trash bags and old paint cans. At least 6 of them piled neatly near the back corner. "What the?" I muttered. Donnelly frowned. "You said you didn't have any waste material." "I don't," I said quickly. "This wasn't here yesterday." He crossed his arms. "Someone dumped it here overnight." "You got cameras," I grinned. "Oh, do I ever." We went inside and I pulled up the footage on my laptop. The timeline jumped to 2:13 a.m. And there it was. Headlights flickered across the backyard fence. The camera switched to night mode. A shadowy figure climbed through the side gate, dragging bags behind her. Blonde hair. Beige coat. I didn't even need to zoom in. "Bingo," I said quietly. Donnelly leaned forward. "Is that the same woman who filed the complaints?" "The one and only." We watched as she stacked the bags, arranged them like props, then crouched down with her phone snapping photos. When she left, she even took a minute to pose hands on hips, proud as a cat that just dropped a mouse on the porch. By the time the clip ended, Donnelly was shaking his head. "In 20 years of this job," he said, "I've never seen anything that stupid." She actually staged a violation on camera. "Lillian loves performance," I said. "She just didn't know she was auditioning for the role of defendant." Donnelly made his report on the spot. "Official finding, false complaint, malicious intent, evidence tampering," he said, writing it down. "And I'll be forwarding this to the sheriff's office. We don't play games like this." He handed me a copy of his report, nodded, and drove off. I stood there for a moment, letting it sink in. It was over. Finally, she'd gone too far, even for Maple Ridge's endless tolerance. Except, she didn't know yet. And that gave me one final opportunity to end this my way. That evening, I posted a screenshot from the security footage to the Maple Ridge Neighbors group. No accusations, no names, just the image of a mysterious figure sneaking through my gate at 2 a.m. With the caption, "Caught on camera last night." Any idea who this dedicated environmental activist might be? Within 5 minutes, the comments exploded. "Looks like Lillian's coat. Same shoes she wore to the last HOA meeting. She's framing people now. Oh my God." Then someone, probably Martha, the treasurer, dropped the final bomb. "That's definitely Lillian. I recognize the scarf. She wore it to my housewarming party and bragged it was real cashmere." The post had 500 reactions before dinner. By nightfall, someone tagged the HOA page. Gary called me around 8 p.m. "Ethan, what did you do?" "Just shared the truth," I said innocently. "Well, it's working. We just got 50 emails demanding a full HOA review. And the sheriff's office already called. They've got your footage." "Perfect," I said, leaning back in my chair. Maybe justice finally works faster than the HOA's printer. The next morning, the inevitable happened. 2 sheriff's deputies and Inspector Donnelly showed up at Lillian's house with a warrant. She tried to talk her way out of it, waving her hands and shouting about community standards and character assassination, but they had the footage. Within an hour, she was escorted off her property, not in handcuffs, but close enough for the neighbors to applaud. I watched from across the street, sipping coffee like it was the finale of a TV show I'd waited months to see. Gary walked over, shaking his head. "You know, I never thought I'd see this day." "Neither did I said. "But I learned something about people like her." "Oh yeah, what's that?" "They build their own traps. I just give them better lighting." For the first time in months, Maple Ridge Estates felt peaceful again. The streets were quiet. The HOA emails stopped flooding my inbox. People started decorating their lawns again, freely, creatively, without the fear of being fined for visual imbalance. One neighbor even hung a little sign on her fence that said, "Smile, you're not being inspected." Every time I passed it, I couldn't help but laugh. A week later, I got a letter from the county attorney's office. Lillian was facing charges for trespassing, harassment, and filing false reports. She'd also been permanently banned from serving on any HOA board in the state. I pinned that letter to my fridge like a trophy. But the best part wasn't the victory, it was the quiet. No more SUVs, no forged notices, no 2 a.m. flashlight patrols, just stillness. Of course, there's one rule in Maple Ridge Estates I've learned by heart: peace never lasts forever. And as I stepped outside one evening, I noticed something tucked under my welcome mat, a small white card with a single line written in delicate handwriting. "Enjoy your peace, Mr. Parker. You earned it." No signature. But this time, I didn't feel anger. I just smiled, slipped the card into my pocket, and whispered, "Thanks, Lillian. I already am." It had been 6 quiet months since the Lillian era ended in Maple Ridge Estates. The lawns looked greener, the HOA emails were shorter, and no one had been fined for unsightly garden gnomes in half a year. The whole community had healed, or at least we'd convinced ourselves it had. I was finally enjoying suburban peace. Morning coffee on the porch, weekends on the lake, even the occasional neighborhood barbecue that didn't turn into a policy debate. But like every great horror movie, just when the audience starts to relax, something moves in the background. It began innocently enough. One morning, I received a friendly HOA newsletter in my inbox. New logo, clean layout, and a cheerful headline welcoming Maple Ridge's new community relations manager, Linda Archer. The name didn't ring a bell, but the tone was oddly familiar. Let's keep Maple Ridge Estates beautiful, harmonious, and consistent with our proud heritage of high standards. High standards. The same phrase Lillian used to justify every insane fine she ever wrote. I shrugged it off. Plenty of suburban busybodies use that kind of language. Still, something about the email signature, "Best Linda A," made me pause. A coincidence, I told myself. Just a coincidence. Over the next few weeks, Linda Archer became a familiar presence around the neighborhood. She organized community cleanup days, sent out surveys about mailbox colors, even reintroduced friendly HOA reminders. It was like someone rebooted Lillian's rulebook under a softer brand name. But what really caught my attention was the voice. At the next HOA meeting, my first in months, Gary introduced her to the room. "Everyone, this is Linda Archer, our new community relations manager. She'll be handling public communication and compliance outreach." She stood up wearing a wide-brimmed hat and a cream blouse. Her hair was darker now, chestnut brown instead of blonde, and she wore thick glasses. But the moment she spoke, every hair on my arm stood on end. "Thank you, Gary," she said smoothly. "I'm here to bring unity back to Maple Ridge Estates. We've had turbulent leadership in the past, but my goal is to rebuild trust and order." That voice. I'd heard it shout, threaten, and whisper, "You'll regret this," through my driveway gate. Lillian Allen had returned. I didn't say anything right away. If she wanted to play undercover boss, fine. I was going to play detective. After the meeting, she approached me with a smile that could freeze water. "Mr. Parker, I've heard so much about you," she said, warmly extending a gloved hand. "Have you now?" I replied, shaking it. Her grip was firm, practiced. "Oh yes," she said. "Your attention to detail, your passion for community fairness. We need more homeowners like you." It took everything in me not to laugh out loud. "Glad to be of service," I said. "And you're new to Maple Ridge." "Relatively," she said quickly. "Just moved here from Oak Hollow Estates." I nodded. "Ah, I've heard they have very strict HOA policies there." She smirked just slightly. "You could say that. Her disguise might have fooled most people, but I wasn't most people." The next day, I went full Sherlock Holmes. I checked property records. No one named Linda Archer owned a home in Maple Ridge. She must have been renting. I looked up tenant lists, cross-referenced them with the HOA's directory, and bingo, a small guest house listed under Michael Allen, her ex-husband. She was hiding in plain sight, living under his name. Now the question was, why come back? The answer arrived in the form of a new HOA policy draft she emailed out a week later. Proposal: reinstatement of historical governance standards for former board members. Translation: a loophole to get herself reinstated. That was the moment I decided to end this once and for all. I needed proof that Linda Archer and Lillian Allen were one and the same, undeniable evidence. So I came up with a plan. Step 1: bait. I emailed her directly. Subject: question about bylaws. "Hi Linda, I remember Lillian once mentioned that the HOA restricted camera angles for home surveillance. Do you know if that's still true, Ethan?" It was an obvious trap. The camera rule never existed. I just wanted to see how she'd respond. Her reply came 2 hours later, from Linda Archer. "Oh yes, Mr. Parker, that's still in place. The policy about camera placement was established during her tenure." Gotcha. Step 2: confirmation. I invited her to coffee under the pretense of discussing neighborhood outreach ideas. She arrived at the cafe right on time, wearing her usual disguise, hat, glasses, polite smile. As we sat down, I turned on my phone's recorder under the table. "So Linda," I began casually, "you mentioned having experience with HOA leadership before. Which community was that in? Oh, a few here and there, she said vaguely. I served in administrative roles. Nothing dramatic. Not dramatic, I chuckled. You ever deal with, let's say, difficult homeowners? Her smile twitched. Oh, Mr. Parker, every HOA has its rebels. Some people think the rules don't apply to them. They challenge authority, make scenes, it's exhausting. Yeah, I said, sipping my coffee. I imagine it must have been exhausting for Lillian Allen, too. Her eyes froze for half a second, a flicker, a micro-expression, but enough to confirm everything. Then she laughed, forced brittle. I wouldn't know. I've only heard the stories. Of course, I said, smiling. Stories. I ended the conversation, politely thanked her, and went straight to Sam, my lawyer. Sam nearly spit out his drink when I told him. She came back disguised. Are we living in a soap opera? Pretty much, I said. And I've got her voice on tape. He grinned. Perfect. Let's see how she handles Act 2. The following HOA meeting was the most attended one yet. Word had already spread, someone had leaked, that Linda was proposing a reinstatement clause. The moment she stood at the podium, murmurs rippled through the crowd. Thank you all, she began. This community deserves strong, experienced leadership. That's why I'm proposing we allow former board members. I raised my hand. Question, Madam Archer. She turned toward me with visible irritation. Yes, Mr. Parker, could you please clarify how long you've lived in Maple Ridge? She hesitated. A few months, and before that, a pause. Oak Hollow Estates. Interesting, I said, pulling out my phone. Because Oak Hollow doesn't have a record of any HOA member named Linda Archer. Whispers erupted. She stammered. That's absurd. And one more thing, I interrupted. You might want to explain this. I pressed play on my phone. Her recorded voice filled the room. Oh yes, Mr. Parker. That's still in place. The policy about camera placement was established during her tenure. Gasps echoed. Her face drained of color. That's doctored, she snapped. Sam, standing beside me, raised a folder. We've already had the recording authenticated. Gary leaned forward, jaw tight. Lillian, is that you? The silence that followed was deafening. Then she ripped off her glasses, slamming them on the table. You people have no idea what it's like to keep this place from falling apart. You think rules just enforce themselves. The room broke into chaos. Security, Gary shouted. 2 HOA volunteers stepped forward gently but firmly, escorting her toward the door. She twisted back to glare at me. You can't erase me, Ethan. Maple Ridge needs me, I smiled. No, Lillian. Maple Ridge needed peace. And now it has it. The board voted that night to permanently blacklist her from all HOA roles, not just here, but through the county HOA registry. The next morning, a moving truck appeared in front of her guest house. By noon, she was gone. No goodbye, no spectacle, just silence. I stood at my window, coffee in hand, watching as the truck turned the corner. Peace again, for real this time. Still, as the days passed, I couldn't help but glance at my security feed every now and then. Just habit, just in case. Because with Lillian Allen, you never knew. A month later, I got one last letter. No threats, no insults. Just a single sheet of paper with neat handwriting. Dear Mr. Parker, you were right, Maple Ridge didn't need me. But admit it, you'll miss the excitement. L. I read it twice, folded it carefully, and tucked it into the same folder where I'd kept every one of her old notices, my personal scrapbook of suburban warfare. Then I walked out onto the porch, smiled at the sound of sprinklers, and whispered, Rest in peace, HOA Queen. For a while, life in Maple Ridge Estates truly did feel like the epilogue of a long, exhausting novel. The lawns were symmetrical, the email chains were short, and the air smelled like freshly trimmed hedges instead of passive aggression. It was quiet. Too quiet. That should have been my first clue. Because when people like Lillian Allen vanish, they don't retire, they recalculate. It all started one perfectly ordinary morning in late spring. I was enjoying my second cup of coffee, reading through the HOA's new budget report. Yes, I still checked. It was trauma when I noticed an email from Gary, subject line, in all caps, urgent, we're being sued. At first I thought it was a joke. Maple Ridge had survived everything from overgrown lawn scandals to gnome-related protests. A lawsuit sounded almost cinematic. But then I opened the attachment, and there it was, Plaintiff Lillian Allen. Defendants Maple Ridge Estates, HOA, and Ethan Parker, homeowner, caused defamation, wrongful suspension, and emotional distress. She was back. Gary called me within minutes. His voice sounded like someone who had aged 10 years in an hour. Ethan, I swear, we followed every protocol. The county verified her misconduct. She has no case. Calm down, I said. Of course she doesn't. This is just her last desperate move. She filed in district court, district. Not small claims, so what's her goal? Publicity, leverage, maybe revenge. She wants headlines. I sighed. Then, let's make sure she gets the wrong kind of headlines. The first hearing was scheduled 2 weeks later. I'd been in my share of HOA meetings, but stepping into an actual courtroom with her sitting across the aisle, it felt surreal. She looked different again. Her hair had grown out, styled into a polished brown bob. She wore a navy blazer and a sympathetic expression like she'd spent months practicing her reformed citizen look in the mirror. Her lawyer, a young guy who clearly didn't realize what he'd gotten into, stood beside her like a soldier marching into battle without armor. When the judge entered, Lillian's smile returned the same thin, sharp grin I'd seen 100 times before, now hidden behind legal formality. Her attorney started strong, painting her as the victim of a community conspiracy, claiming she was ostracized, humiliated, and falsely accused. He even had the nerve to say Miss Allen merely sought to uphold neighborhood standards when Mr. Parker launched a public smear campaign against her. I almost laughed out loud. When it was my turn to testify, I stood calmly, folder in hand, and let the documents speak for themselves. The audit report confirming her misuse of HOA funds. The sheriff's incident record from her trespassing stunt. The fake inspection photos she'd taken at 2 a.m., and of course the video of her sneaking through my gate, complete with her muttered, "This'll show him." By the time my lawyer Sam was done presenting the young attorney across the aisle, looked like he was ready to defect to our side. But Lillian, she didn't flinch. She watched me with calm, icy focus, as if waiting for her real move to land. And then she dropped it. "Your Honor," she said, standing to speak for herself, "the defense is omitting key evidence of collusion within the HOA board, specifically financial irregularities tied to Mr. Parker's friend Gary Miller." The courtroom stirred. Even Sam blinked. "What is she talking about?" he whispered. Lillian produced a thick folder and handed it to the bailiff. "These are financial records obtained from the HOA's public filings, payments made to a landscaping company owned by Mr. Miller's cousin. Inflated invoices, kickbacks, hidden maintenance fees, all signed during my suspension." The judge glanced through the documents. "Mr. Parker, are you aware of this?" I hesitated. "No, Your Honor." Gary, sitting behind me, looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. Lillian turned toward the court with mock sincerity. "I may have made mistakes, but corruption doesn't end with me. I was punished for doing what others are still doing in the dark. It was pure manipulation, but disturbingly effective." The judge didn't dismiss her case that day. Instead, he ordered an independent audit of the HOA's finances. In one move, she'd turned her losing lawsuit into an investigation, one that could drag everyone down with her. That night, I called Gary. He sounded panicked. "Ethan, I swear to you I didn't do anything illegal. My cousin runs a legit business. We've been using his landscaping company for years." "I believe you," I said. But Lillian just planted a seed of doubt. "She's trying to divide us. She's succeeding." I hung up feeling uneasy. Lillian didn't need to win in court, she just needed chaos. And Maple Ridge had always been fertile ground for that. The next few weeks were pure madness. The auditor showed up combing through every receipt, every landscaping invoice, every cent of HOA spending. Neighbors started whispering again, this time about Gary. Maybe he really was pocketing funds. Lillian warned us, what if she was right? The irony wasn't lost on me. She'd weaponized the same tactics she'd once used to destroy others, and people were falling for it. But while everyone obsessed over Gary, I noticed something no one else did: the watermark on the evidence she'd submitted in court. It wasn't from the county records office. It was from a private data broker in Phoenix, one that specialized in document fabrication for reputation management. Translation, she'd bought fake records to frame Gary. I drove straight to Sam's office and showed him. He whistled. "You just caught her committing fraud in a federal filing." "That's perjury, Ethan. Can we prove it?" "Oh, absolutely. Let's make it cinematic." Sam called the data broker, directly posing as a potential client. Within 10 minutes, they confirmed Lillian's name on a payment invoice. $1,200 for document recovery services. That was the smoking gun. The next court hearing was short and brutal. Sam stood calm and sharp, holding up the invoice. "Your Honor, Miss Allen's evidence against the HOA is entirely fabricated. Here's proof she paid a private company to generate these records under false pretenses." The courtroom fell silent. The judge stared at Lillian. "Is this true?" She didn't answer. Her eyes darted between me, Sam, and her lawyer, who now looked like he was contemplating quitting law entirely. The judge sighed. "Miss Allen, this court does not tolerate falsified evidence. Your case is hereby dismissed with prejudice. And you're fortunate I'm not referring this directly to the district attorney. It was over. Again. But this time it wasn't just a personal victory, it was the final legal nail in her HOA coffin. Outside, the courthouse reporters had gathered. Someone must have leaked the case. A woman with a microphone called out, "Mr. Parker, any comment about the verdict?" I smiled. Just one. If you're ever thinking about buying a house in an HOA, read the bylaws and avoid anyone named Lillian. They laughed. Cameras flashed. And for once, I felt like the main character in someone else's news story, except this time it ended well. That evening, the HOA board met for an emergency session. Gary was cleared of all suspicion, the auditor confirmed no misconduct, and the board unanimously voted to permanently bar Lillian Allen from ever attending a Maple Ridge HOA meeting again. They even renamed the annual neighborhood event the Maple Ridge Garden Gala to something new, the Freedom from Karen Festival. Gary raised a toast that night, to Ethan, the man who read the bylaws so we didn't have to. Everyone laughed. Later that night, I sat alone on my porch, the same spot where this entire saga began. For the first time in over a year, the street was quiet. The moonlight reflected off the smooth asphalt, no SUVs, no flashing lights, no drama. And yet I couldn't help but think about her. Somewhere out there, Lillian Allen was probably watching the news, fuming behind her perfect manicure, planning her next move. But this time, she wouldn't be coming back to Maple Ridge. She'd lost everything, her power, her credibility, her audience, and I'd gained exactly what I wanted from the start. Peace. Still, as I turned to go inside, I saw something on my porch bench, another white card identical to the one months ago. This one read, "Lawsuits end, stories don't. See you soon." I stared at it for a moment, then chuckled softly. "Lillian," I said to the night, "you really don't know when to quit, do you?" But I smiled anyway. Because if she did come back, well, this time I'd have every camera rolling. When I found that last white card on my porch, I laughed, but only for a second. The laughter faded as fast as the warmth from my coffee. Because even though it was absurd to think she'd come back again, part of me knew she would. People like Lillian Allen don't know how to stop until someone else writes the end for them. But this time, I wasn't angry. I was prepared. I'd learned her rhythm, the way she built drama like a story, always saving one last twist. The lawsuit had failed, the audits cleared, the neighborhood moved on, but Lillian never left a stage without an encore. I just didn't know yet what kind of show she was planning. It began small, as always. 2 weeks after the court verdict, strange posts started appearing on the Maple Ridge Community Forum. They weren't under her name, of course. The account used the alias Concerned Resident 42. Is Ethan Parker really the hero people think he is? Did you know the HOA quietly dropped an ethics investigation against him? Why does he have so many cameras? What's he hiding? Classic Lillian. The grammar was too proper, the tone too dramatic, and the punctuation, her signature triple dots, gave her away instantly. I didn't reply. I'd learned that silence infuriated her more than confrontation ever could. But behind the scenes, I started gathering every scrap of digital evidence, screenshots, timestamps, IP logs, and metadata. I wasn't just going to expose her again, I was going to end her narrative once and for all. A few days later, Gary knocked on my door. "She's back online," he said, waving a printed page. "She's telling people you hacked her old HOA account." "Of course she is," I said dryly. "What's next?" I stole her pearls. "This isn't funny, Ethan. People are actually believing it. Some of the newer residents didn't live through the chaos. They don't know who she really is." He was right. Half the neighborhood had turned over since last year. To them, I wasn't the guy who saved the HOA. I was just some homeowner with cameras and an old grudge. That's when it hit me. Her new plan wasn't revenge, it was revisionism. She was rewriting history. And in Maple Ridge, perception was everything. So I did something I'd never done before. I decided to beat her at her own game. I called Sam, my ever-patient lawyer/friend. "Tell me," I said, "what's the legal limit of public embarrassment before it counts as defamation?" He raised an eyebrow. "You're planning something. Let's call it community education." The following weekend, I organized a Maple Ridge HOA appreciation night. Officially, it was a casual gathering to celebrate the community's progress since the reforms, but unofficially, it was my stage. The event was held at the community center, free pizza, cheap wine, and a giant projector set up in front of a modest crowd of 50 residents. I made sure to live stream it on the same community forum where Lillian had been spreading her ghost stories. As everyone settled in, I took the microphone. "Thank you all for coming," I began. "Tonight isn't about rules or regulations, it's about transparency. Because if we've learned anything here, it's that sunlight is the best disinfectant." A few chuckles. Good sign. I clicked the remote. The projector lit up. Slide 1, a screenshot of the concerned resident 4-2 posts. Slide 2, a chart showing identical IP addresses between those posts and Lillian's old HOA account. Slide 3, an audio clip, her voice from last year saying, "You can't erase me. Ethan Maple Ridge needs me." The crowd gasped. This, I continued, is what happens when obsession meets Wi-Fi. I played a short montage. I'd edited together every piece of evidence from the past year, neatly narrated with timestamps. Her fake inspections, the staged dumping, the forged invoices, the courtroom outburst. Even her Linda Archer disguise. It was part documentary, part roast, and completely devastating. Gary nearly spit out his drink when the video ended with a quote overlay. "Never underestimate a bored homeowner with cameras." Ethan Parker. The room burst into applause. The next day, the video hit social media. By noon, it had over 5,000,000 views, mostly from HOA meme pages and suburban drama junkies. People everywhere were laughing, sharing, commenting things like, "This is better than Netflix. Lillian Allen is the final boss of HOAs. Someone please make a movie about this. It wasn't just a local scandal anymore." It was viral. That's when the phone calls started. Local news stations wanted interviews. Podcasts wanted sound bites. Even a YouTube channel called HOA Nightmares reached out asking if they could feature my story. For a brief, ridiculous moment, I became the guy who defeated the HOA Karen. But fame, even neighborhood-level fame, comes with consequences. On a rainy Tuesday night, about a week after the video went viral, my doorbell rang. I checked the camera feed before opening and froze. Lillian, no disguise this time, no clipboard, just standing there in the rain-soaked makeup, smeared eyes wild but oddly calm. I opened the door, careful to keep my distance. "You really couldn't stay away, could you?" I said softly. She tilted her head. "You humiliated me." "I didn't humiliate you, Lillian. You did that yourself. I just hit play." She took a step forward. "You think you won, don't you? You think you're the hero." I shrugged. "No heroes here, just homeowners." Her eyes glistened, not with tears but fury. "You don't get it. I built Maple Ridge. I made it what it is. You tried to own it," I said. "That's not the same thing." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Rain tapped against the porch roof like impatient fingers. Then she reached into her coat and pulled out a flash drive. She tossed it onto the ground between us. "Go ahead," she said. "Add this to your little movie." I looked down. "What's on it?" Everything, she whispered. "Emails, records, things your precious HOA board doesn't want anyone to see." And before I could say another word, she turned and walked into the rain, disappearing down the street. Sam examined the flash drive the next day. "It's legit," he said slowly. "Old HOA correspondence, hidden expense reports, and wait for it, emails from a developer." "What developer?" he scrolled. "A company called Ridgeview Partners. They've been negotiating to buy part of the neighborhood for a commercial expansion. Looks like Gary and a few others knew." I blinked. "You're telling me she was right?" "Again, partially," Sam said. "She wasn't trying to protect Maple Ridge, she was trying to leverage it. These emails show she was promised a consultant position if the sale went through." My jaw tightened, so she was never fighting for order. She was fighting for control and profit. 2 weeks later, the developer deal collapsed under public scrutiny. The county froze all HOA assets pending a full review. Gary resigned quietly, citing health reasons. And Lillian, trust. She vanished again, no trace. No new aliases, no more cards. The local paper published one final headline: "HOA scandal ends with developer collapse, community reclaims control." I was quoted once: "Sometimes the villains expose bigger villains. Either way, sunlight wins." It's been a year since then. Maple Ridge feels different now, free, imperfect, alive. People decorate however they want. Kids ride bikes down the street without worrying about noise ordinances. The HOA still exists technically, but it's a shadow of its former self. As for me, I still get the occasional letter from strangers thanking me for taking down the ultimate HOA Karen. Some even send coffee gift cards. Apparently my caffeine habits are internet famous now. But sometimes late at night when I'm reviewing my security feed, I catch myself pausing at the shadows between the houses. Because no matter how much time passes, I can't shake the feeling that one day I'll see a figure there again, clipboard in hand, muttering about property lines. And if that ever happens, well, the cameras are still rolling. In the end, Maple Ridge Estates became more than just a neighborhood. It became a lesson in human nature wrapped inside a cul-de-sac. People like Lillian Allen thrive where fear meets silence. For years, she ruled through intimidation, hiding behind HOA rules and polished smiles. But what finally stopped her wasn't anger or revenge, it was truth, patience, and a well-placed camera. I used to think the battle was about parking spaces bylaws or personal pride. But standing there on my quiet porch, I realized it was about something far simpler: boundaries. The kind you build not just with fences, but with integrity. So if you ever find your own HOA Karen standing in your driveway, remember this: you don't need to shout louder, just be smarter. Document, stay calm, and let the truth speak for itself. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't humiliation. It's peace, the kind that comes when the loudest person in the neighborhood finally runs out of words.